catchy title. I'll try to go through this quickly so I can save time for questions. Please ask questions at the end. I hate those when people just kind of sit there, I don't have anything to say. Everybody ought to have something to say about this topic. So, the building boom in Charlotte, how bad architecture can wreck our city and what we can do about it. Now, I stole part of my title from a TED Talk that was done by a man named James Howard Kunstler. If you don't know the TED Talk, I recommend you look it up. And as an aside, if you're not spending all your time watching TED Talks, I just don't know what you're doing. A couple things about Charlotte. Forbes has pegged it as the 19th fastest growing city for 2018. That trend that we've been seeing over the past couple of years is going to continue. 60 people move to Charlotte every day. There's a lot of numbers floating out there about how many people move to Charlotte. The city planning director actually put a task force together to get a real number. It's 60. That's a lot of people coming to our city every day. The UDO, which is the Unified Development Ordinance in Charlotte, is set to finish a rewrite in 2020. So I just want you to think about what 2 years of explosive growth can do without some input on that ordinance. And I suggest that all of you get involved in giving some input to the city on what's going to happen with that ordinance. Some of the problems were 42nd out of 240. Sorry, hey Jeff, there's some. 42nd out of 240 in the most congested cities. That's not very good. Raleigh's 72 for comparison, so they're actually doing better than that, despite what you might think. And Greensboro is 232 on that list, and I'll tell you why that is for Greensboro. They plan ahead. They've just about got their loop around the city finished, and not near enough cars to warrant them. But they're planning 10, 15, 20 years ahead, and we're planning 10, 15, 20 years behind. We're way behind. And we're dead last in economic mobility among the 50 largest cities in America. That's real sad. There's been a lot of press about it. I'm not going to go into some of the reasons why that is in this presentation. We're going to focus more on buildings, but I think these are interconnected items. And council member Julie herself said, we do not have a plan. I'm completely frustrated. We don't know what we want our city to look like. That's scary, coming from a council person in cities like us, with as many professionals around. Census data, everyone knows the explosive suburban growth, 92,000 2010. I expect 2020 to be no different. In terms of economics, I think everybody knows about the crescent. That's kind of just hanging there, these high poverty areas. Not a lot of growth in those areas, and I think that has a lot to do with economic mobility as well. Here's a couple of quotes from my buddy's TED Talk. He's a slightly batty guy, but it's worth watching. Things to point out that a sense of place, which is something we all try to design around, was, and I think he put it, it was thrown in the garbage after World War II. We had a huge economic boom after World War II, not dissimilar to what we're experiencing now. And a lot of people made a lot of money, but we forgot about where we want to be in society and how we want to interact with our cities and towns. I think that's very sad. And this is probably my favorite quote from him. The salient problem for us is that these are places not worth caring about. If you're building places that aren't worth caring about, and people do not want to inhabit them, they don't take care of them, vandalism, crime, all these things crop up. Because we're focusing too much on the economics of it, and not enough about how human purchase, or how it's affecting our lives, stress levels, things like that. So what I did, I got on my Lime scooter, and Aaron and I went around the city and just checked out some good and bad things. Now, before I show you some of these pictures, this is not about architectural style. Everybody has their own thoughts about what is good looking, et cetera, et cetera. This is about decisions that were made on a project or not investigated thoroughly enough that resulted in something in a place that's not worth caring about. This is my favorite one. Everyone knows this, yeah, right? Good for them, by the way, for holding out. But this is a development that the developer, again, I'm not calling anybody out here, was so interested in getting these extra units that they were willing to straddle the Thirsty Beaver Saloon to get it. And they held out and they won. But what happens as a result of this is you get blank facades, presumably because of fire. And that's sad. I think maybe we could have backed off a little bit. Maybe we didn't have to make so much money, right? The Thirsty Beaver is a place worth caring about. I don't know about this. This is next door, now leasing. You want to live here? Me either. This is another favorite, the useless balcony. Okay. A useless balcony. This could have easily been an economic decision. Let's not do the railing. How much can we save there? And maybe do some better landscaping and some things like this. This does nothing for anybody. You can't walk out of it. The automobile slum, I think, is a problem that our city and cities across America are having to deal with. Gas prices are low for us compared to other developing countries, and it's easy for us to drive everybody to have a car and things like this. We are way behind on our mass transportation system. Way behind. We should be embarrassed. Here's a good one. I don't know if anybody wants to wander back there. You're likely to get mugged. It's super dark. I have no idea who the architect is, but these two columns right here are saying to me, do not come in here. They're guarding the hole that nobody wants to go to. This is a relatively small building, too, and it's so complicated in its geometry. They've had to add this map to tell you where you are. Okay? There's only like 4 things to go to in this building, but you can't get there because it's telling you, don't come near my building. A little washed out, but you can see the park bench here. These are small decisions I'm talking about. Look which way the park bench is facing. That's what you see. Given the choice, I don't think you want to use that bench. Here's another, this is a park as well, and there's a reason nobody is there. Because there's no trees, there's no shade, and it's too hot. This wasn't a weird time of day. People should be using this space. Next to a billboard, creating inviting and friendly communities. And this is where we placed our, all I can do is turn them off. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. I see the park bench here. Facing the wrong way. Only useful for the smokers, I can tell you that. That's the view. There's the park again. It's not being used and we all know why. Well, there's plenty of picnic tables, but nobody's going to eat there because it's too hot.
Where is it?
That's on East Boulevard.
Right on the
Yeah. It should be filled with people when it's not. Again, and I'll use a term from this talk, a nature band-aid is not enough. Right? That's what he calls these nature band-aids. Never mind that those plants are growing too close to ever develop into anything big enough to cover up the presumably backflow of enterprises. Some more on South Boulevard. We've had a lot of growth on South Boulevard. This should be full in an apartment building. It's not full because the streets along South Boulevard are not friendly enough to want to walk down. It is car-centric. Everything is based on the street. When you walk down these sidewalks, you feel like the balconies are going to fall on your head. It's just not a good sense of place. We had this problem with building right up against the property line, right up against the streetscape, presumably to maximize the square footage that we can get out of the building. But this is not a human scale. It's very foreboding to be next to. And nobody wants to walk down it. And again, this is the middle of the day. I was the only one on the street. Here's another good one. They had to put up a sign that says welcome, but of course this sign says go away. Right? These are small decisions that we can make. Let's think about where we want to put these things. How is it affecting the people that visit our spaces? Another good one, they put up these solar shades that do nothing because it's facing the wrong direction for one. They put them up because they're trendy, right? This is what everything's doing now. Let's pop some aluminum fins on the thing and see if that does a good job. Well, notice what they had to come back and do. Put a real canopy that actually protected you from the rain when you're walking up to a business. So how much money did we spend on this thing that could have been allocated to other things that have more of an impact on our lives? No comment. This is not making me feel better. This is actually a public building, right? Uptown. That says go away. It has turned its back on the city completely. Go right up to the property line again. No windows, no nothing. It does not say come visit our museum. We were talking about parking decks earlier. I don't know what our obsession with parking decks is. I know why they're done. Just simply because we don't have the room for all the cars we're driving. I think a lot of us need to seriously consider what our impact is on the built environment by sticking with our car. A building in South Beach here, and then another one that looks like it was chopped off by a beaver. I don't know where the rest of it is. The middle's gone. It sells. And, those are commercial buildings, but unfortunately this trend has spread and has done so since about the 1920s, after we were trying to get away from the smog of the cities and went into suburbia. This is a duplex, so 2 people have to live in this thing. Right? This is what most of the people in America are living in. In a little while, I'm going to go through how this can affect your health. All right, 10 points for anybody who can tell me what's wrong with this picture. Close. Anyone? No? They're not even real clocks. Not only are the times different, they're painted on. Painted on. Okay? What message is this sending? The message is we don't care. And these guys. You're not fooling anyone. You're not fooling. There aren't trees in this state that grow that high. Right? This isn't working. We need to rethink what we're trying to do. Right? We're going to have cell phones. We're going to have towers. Right? They're not trees. It's a waste of resources. Marlon Blackwell, famous architect, said the proportion and scale are free. I wish more architects were here because it is free. It doesn't cost you a single dime to think about proportion and scale. And you can get much more value to your clients and the general public if you think about these things. All right, so good spaces. What are good spaces? Good spaces are active. They're permeable, they have people, they're places worth caring about. This is actually a good example, despite my objections to Epicenter in general. It has retail on the ground floor. It has places for people to sit outside. It generally provides some shade. It's lacking a lot of nature. Of course, it has the nature of Band-Aid. But it is a neat little alley to come upon when you're walking down the street. It's actually decent. One of the better ones uptown, in front of the tower. This is good. First floor retail. Decent amount of nature that's had some time to grow over time. I think that's good. We ought to think about maybe planting some bigger trees up front and not waiting for it. Given the number of towers that have gone on uptown lately, I want you to think Did any of them dedicate plaza space? Were they all built right up to the line? Was that building emptied suddenly? Did they have anywhere to go? Is there anywhere to connect with the building? We're getting a little greedy here. And I just want to compare the bipolarness of Epicenter. Here's a good one. Here's around the corner on the other side. The retail's on the first floor, but it's popped up half a story. It's not inviting. It's not something you want to walk into. Even if you did want to go to this Vita place, the Mexican restaurant, which is a decent Mexican restaurant, the brick wall here is telling you, don't come in here. This is something to stay away from. This is something that invites you in. Excellent green space right across the street from the Biloba. There's tons of first floor retail. People are always moving in and out. There's some galleries, there's some shops. People all over the place eating lunch, working on their laptops, things like that. These are good places to be. Wachovia, another one, or whatever they're calling it these days. This is used mostly, I think, because of the shade trees. See, most of the people are in the shade on a summer day at least. But it also has, for winter months, places that do get sun. I think you need that balance if you want people to use them. Again, their trees had time to grow over time, which we should think about bigger trees again. This is a good example. People are always coming in and out of the market here. It's great to have people and activating spaces. Whole Foods even has a sitting area out front. You see a lot of people sitting there and eating, interacting with each other. Those are good things. One thing I'm really against is, and they didn't do it in this building, but they're putting all the workout rooms on the first floor so people can work out and look at the street. Now, is that the best use of that space? I would argue that you want retail space there. So the building is activated, it's public spaces. I don't necessarily want people to look at me while I'm working out. People may not be using it just for that reason, but that is prime retail space. Don't waste it for the workout. The fountain was empty here, but water is a very, very powerful thing. Humans were very connected to water and nature, and these things will really, really activate a space. It has some sound to it. It does some sound masking of the cars going by, the other people talking. It also is just pleasing. So don't underestimate the power of water. Good shade here. All right, so what can we do? That's a tougher question to answer. But I think we all agree that this is not a good car. Right? We have some rough agreement on whether it's a good looking car. And all agree this is probably a good looking car. I didn't put the ugly food on here, spared you that, but I think we can agree this is good looking. Maybe some of you like this. It's a fine line on what's good and what's not. That's a classic. So we have all kinds of opinions about our cars, our clothes, our food, on what's good and what isn't. And we have zero opinion about our biggest expense, which is our homes and the places we live and work. We're very, very fickle consumers when it comes to food, especially food. And we're not at all surprised or even shocked when we see things like this being built. This is a list of the TV shows on HGTV. And actually, it's not even all the TV shows. It's just the letter B's. There are thousands of them. It's become really popular lately. It's Property Brothers and this kind of stuff. I just highlighted a couple of them. Not that I like to watch. I think they're just fun games. Brooks and Mortar. Why, if we're consuming all this about design and development and things like this, why are we so poor at rejecting ideas like this? There's a disconnect between our relatively good design sense for products and poor design sense for architecture. And the biggest one I found in my research is connections to nature. is no substitute for nature at all. In fact, there's some pretty good studies out there. This one was done in Japan, I believe. They actually showed that walking in forests, even urban forests, will lower your stress levels more than just the exercise would have done on its own. It's fascinating research going into this. This one was done in Finland, where they actually did urban nature areas, so there's parks and things I was talking about. Lower your blood pressure, get stress relief way down. Let's see. And, importantly, time spent in the city decreases positive feelings among participants. We are walking around angry in our cities and towns because we have no connection to nature. And this study proved it. They actually found that greener streets have lower crime rates. Think about that. Greener streetscapes have lower crime rates. Anybody want to guess why? Or their speculation?
People care about
A, they're cared about. But B, the greener streets, people are more likely to sit out on their stoop. They're more likely to sit under the trees. And so there are more people on the street, and so there's less likely to be crime. So when the street is dead and it's one guy, that's who the mugger's going to go after. When there's 30 people around talking to their neighbors, doing other things, there's going to be less crime. So think about that. We could be planting trees instead of hiring cops. Don't forget, stop planting those trees. Please. Not only are they hurting the environment, they're terrible trees. They're super fast growing, which is why developers like to use them. But they're very weak trees. Right? They're a really soft wood, and because they're fast growing, they're very weak. The ice storms we get in here will take these out in no time, cause property damage, and they're choking out some of our better trees, dogwoods, maples, and redbuds, things like that. If you have one in your yard, cut it down tonight. I'm not kidding. This is not a connection to nature. This is not enough. Okay? The hardscape is not doing it. There's nobody on this street. What's going on? I believe those are actually maples, thank God. There's some old scrubby maples that over time are not going to do well in that island planter. They'll most likely die or be ignored enough because they're not getting the proper amount of food. And lastly, think of yourself as a citizen of your town, your state, and your country, and not a consumer. Okay? Citizens have responsibilities to each other. Consumers do not. Right? And if you think about the things that you buy in that way, am I going to rent this apartment? Well, what effect is it having on my health, my stress levels, and the people around me? Another thing you can do is get involved. You're obviously here to talk. There's not nearly enough people at the city planning meetings all across America. They don't think how it affects them. And spread the word. Tell as many people as you can about these studies, that nature actually increases positive feelings towards you and the other people in your community. And that can actually reduce crime. I mean, if half the city council people knew that, I think there'd be a lot more action around it. By the way, Charlotte has one of the best tree canopies of an uptown area, and we keep it really clean. It's a good place to be. But we're destroying our relatively green county-wide at an amazing rate. I mean, it's just so much easier to go clear cut and put a development up than it is to take 10 grand to put tree barricades around that one beautiful oak in the community that could actually be a place for people to gather and become those parks. Grading contractors are my nemesis because all they do is destroy trees. And then if you'll forgive me, I'll do a shameless plug on one of our projects, and then we'll have a good 30 minutes or so to have a conversation. We don't do much residential work, but the residential work that we do is part what we try to do is create a sense of place for that person. This particular client worked in a high-stress environment. They wanted to be out of the city, which is a whole other discussion about moving into the suburbs. But we set it up so as they went home, it was highway to 4-lane road, 2-lane road to road without striping to a gravel driveway. And they needed that decompression as they got to their house to take their stress levels down after a very high stress at work. So I'll point out a couple of things here. We have some solar panels on the roof that you can't see from the front. We're trying to obviously be good stewards of the environment. That's great. In the woods, we saved as many trees as we possibly could that the building wasn't in the root zone. We didn't have the money, again, this is American after all, we didn't have the money to do the root pruning on some of them that we wanted to save. But a lot of them were gums and things like this, and they can be a problem as well. They take 10 years to decay and everything. So it's really quite an interesting plant. We set up the openings in the windows so that they will actually direct air from the prevalent direction. It's going to save on energy costs, but more than anything, it's just nice to have the windows. The oxygen levels are much higher, and the CO2 levels are much lower, and that can actually create enormous health issues being inside so much. Everybody praised Carrier for inventing the air conditioning, but what it's done is it's pushed us inside. You used to sit on the porch and drink iced tea because it was too hot inside. You swung on the porch to move the air across your body and cool you off. And in those ways, you met your neighbors, you knew who your local police force was. And we've been forced inside. It's unfortunate. I recommend all of you try to take more outdoor meetings if you can. Grab whoever you're meeting with. Take a walk around your office park or wherever it is, even uptown, even better, and just try to be outside as much as you can. Of course, stay away from your screens if you can. It's still under construction, obviously, but wood is very sustainable. There's people. We sort of got away from wood and went to steel. The embodied image of a company that owns large tracts of forests in Africa, and they do hardwoods. And they start on one end, clearing, gathering wood, and by the time they get to the other end, the front part is already grown back up to old trees, old growth. 60-year time frames they're talking about for the properties there. That's super sustainable. It also sequesters carbon out of the environment. Skylights are always a good thing. A couple skylights in here, the blue lamp beams, things like this. It's light and airy. This plant needs that decompression. That's what it'll look like finally. They're avid gardeners. They love to be outside. This actually does face south of the overhang. We did multiple tests to see what kind of solar heat gain they get on the building. And we've got it set up so that in the winter they get maximum solar heat gain. Concrete floors, so it'll soak up that heat and re-radiate back in, cool nice. But in the summer, it's completely in shade. That's my talk. So we still have 25 minutes, so there better be lots of questions.
Ian, I'll start with the example you had of the duplex. Really, to me, the crux of the problem, even our industry, is, we don't require architects rather, to design structures under 3,000 square feet or 3,500 square feet. So there's that inherent, you use the phrase message, an inherent message to our community that, the design is not as important for structures like this. So I'll pose the question to the whole group here. How do we make that important? How do we recognize that? Citizenship versus consumer, great, but until the developer feels it, that's what we're going to get.
I think it's partially a failure of our profession. I lay a lot of the blame at architects for some of the buildings I've shown, because those indeed needed an architect, and they're supposed to be, corralling the team, and yet you still get backflow members in front of the front door. Right? I'll put a lot of blame on the architects for that. And then I'll put a lot of blame on putting value on designer services. They're looking at you for something that will generate income. They're not looking at you for something that generates happiness and well-being in humans. So I think we need to be better about spreading that word. We're pretty selfish in that we, want to do something pretty and stick it in the magazine and this kind of thing. But we give way less attention to educating the public on how great places to live can just make you happier in general. And we're doing a bad job at spreading the word. Auto advertisers do a real good job at how happy this can make you, right? You get the sports car, you get the great girl, or whatever it may be. This has been riveted on to American society. How these things can make you status and things like this. But we're very bad at doing it this way. Low income housing is going to be a problem that we're going to have to wrestle with in the future. I just point out to you that many of the multifamily buildings going up, they're not necessarily built with the greatest materials. They're going to degrade over time. And they may end up being the low income areas of the city. They did a thing on NPR this morning that Hidden Valley was once one of the prominent places to live in Charlotte. It was very diverse. And now it's been on TV for MS-13 games. So we better start thinking long term about what these effects are going to have. Does that answer part of your question?
Yeah, I don't know that there's a direct answer.
There may not be. I think people just should realize what this is doing to their psyche. It's causing trouble in children. I think it's a problem for our schools as well. More questions?
Could you go to the slide where you had building right on the sidewalk?
Just about everyone in Charlotte.
So, I've been following this thing for a while now, deal with the stuff in the University City area, too, not only the design, the style of that building, but that setback. This is actually a setback that the city planning people desire to have. And that is, money. It's perfect for the developers. They can just build right to the edge and have less landscape and things like that. But until that changes, even the UDO now, which is trying to improve this condition, doesn't change this requirement on this direction.
Right.
You go to the one a couple of days ago, they had
I couldn't make that.
and they kind of presented the directions of this UDO and how it's going to be an amendment into the zoning thing. It didn't change anything.
Yeah, I know. I wonder what our officials really care about. I think maybe they're at odds with the health of the people and the growth of the city, right? They have to have a tax base for people moving in. They want people to come to the city. I don't fault them for that. We need a tax base. But in some ways, I just don't think they're informed. They don't know that this is causing harm, right? It may be pretty. I mean, it's a decent design building, right? It has ins and outs. It's not a flat facade. It doesn't have any of the usual, useless balconies and things like that. Not a terrible building. This concerns me a little bit. But the compression of the field, being next to these buildings, really is uncomfortable.
And the proximity, I mean, from my perspective, having units on the ground floor on roads like that make no sense.
That's a huge mistake. Don't put your front door to your house straight to the sidewalk.
Which is another requirement.
Yeah,
that they have.
it's a huge mistake. I mean, nobody feels private. I was talking about the building we did. It's about that decompression zone from your public life to your private life. It's a big mistake. It really is. And I think people just don't know how these things are affecting us.
And there was a development I was in Chicago several years ago, and on the river, they have a walkway that's really large for people to go up and down. And the developer built something similar to that concept, but they didn't build it on that walk. They created a separate, pretty wide and generous landscape strip between them that had shrubs and trees. So even though they were only maybe 10 feet away from this native public walkway, the way they treated that separation completely changed the environmental character. And you want to live there.
No, absolutely. And, it's not just a separation distance. A lot of it can be in terms of scale of the building. I wouldn't mind this at all if this was probably a one-story with retail. It just has a different feel. But when you're talking about 4 stories with 10 feet, I mean, it's a proportion problem that isn't looked at. And for the architects out there, they should be pushing back. Really should be pushing back. This is we're the creators of our cities. Let's not get muscled around and generating an income project, because I'm positive that's not why they got into business, and that's certainly why I did.
Well, therein lies the problem, right? Business versus design.
Well,
That's part of the problem.
you can decide whether you want to be someone that creates great places to be, or whether you want to be a commodity for people to use. That's a personal decision you can make. Whether you want to accept those projects, especially now. I mean, it's booming. Pick the great projects and tell the other ones you don't want to do this kind of stuff. I want to have an impact on people's lives. It's one thing when it's 2008 and nobody has any work and we're doing bus shelters. Pick your clients.
So another failure in our industry is not having enough of the design community in whether it's politics or determining what those policies are, in how our zoning is and everything else. And the travesty is, a lot of kids coming out of school really only know one track, and that's I'm going to be an architect, I'm going to go to work and design great buildings and all. We don't do enough early on to introduce all of the other opportunities an architect or a contractor or an engineer can be impactful in the built environment.
Yeah, and I think it's also, again, it's a failure of some of our elected people that they have. I live in Harrisburg. There's a lot of growth going there, and I spend a lot of time at the city council meetings and the planning meetings. When something like this, or in Harrisburg in particular, you don't get notified of a project happening unless you live within 100 feet of it. That's zero, especially in Harrisburg, because it's big lots in Harrisburg. I think it's at least a half acre for a residential property. So you don't even get notification that this stuff is going on. Meanwhile, it's adding to the traffic when you get work, right? Your amenities get more cramped. Great, the town gets some tax base and it's growing, and growth is really good. But the public gets no input. It's real sad. We're working on them to increase the sphere where people get notified. 100 feet.
Yeah, that's really great.
I don't know what it is in Charlotte, but you ought to be scouring your newspapers for public notices. When you see those little yellow signs on places that you drive, if you can, write it down, look up the petition and see what they're trying to do. Because if there's no pushback, the city is going to let it go. Because if there's no public pushback, then the city sees it as more growth, tax growth, and that's a good thing. But we have a balance.
So I have no question. So do they give pushback from
Indeed, they do. A lot of the residents, I'm sure you looked in the paper, most of the most vocal areas are kind of Myers Park, Dilworth residents. Never mind that they're doing the exact same thing on small scale, right? You can go to 40 feet. All the ones are 39 foot 9 3/4 of an inch. They go all the way out to their edges. They're doing the same thing as these guys are doing in residential form, and then they complain when other developers want to come in and do some other things with some other amenities. I think that's a problem. But yes, at planning meetings, most of the time it's traffic. This is adding to the traffic in my area. I don't like it. Rarely, they don't like what's going to be put there. So, you know, if it's a extended stay motel, for example, they don't like the riffraff that's going to show up at a project like that. Even though economically, you probably need some extended stay motels here. Place to live, sometimes that's what they can do when they're in dire straits, or needs them off the streets. So, the one in Harrisburg, generally, you serve the meeting and start complaining about their water quality and things like this. It's kind of sad that the public is less informed than they should be. I don't know what kind of program the city of Charlotte has, but where I live, they do a Citizens Academy that you can sign up for free. It's like an hour for 4 Sundays or something like that. And you go in and they'll teach you about how government works, how you can get involved, make sure you get in ahead of the process to push back on these developments if you don't agree with them, things like that. In general, I try to talk about quality of life on projects, more green space, save as many trees as possible. Build the buildings if you want. I'm not too particular about what they look like. I mean, it's not my business. If someone wants to build them, if someone is willing to pay for them, great. Again, this is America. But, I care more about their quality of life living in that place than I do about the building itself. Especially as design professionals, we should be in these meetings. We should, if we care about the place we live. And we don't want to become, I'm going to drop the A word, Atlanta. Because it's going to happen fast when I can. Basically there with traffic. Other questions? Are they sufficiently bummed out?
Yeah, all my clients are like, what? But I didn't go to the UDO meeting either, but did they talk about going to, I know we did, you showed that Whole Foods and that's a 22-foot setback. Most of these in an urban environment are 12-foot setbacks. You can't do much with 12 feet, but with 22 feet, you can do quite a lot. You can really activate the street. The developers would hate it, but you know, you can get people out there, and I don't know if they touched upon that.
Not a lot, I mean, they just real cursory kind of talk about it.
Yeah.
If you go on the UDO website, they have a draft of their amendment, and it's more graphically oriented. So it'll show conditions like this. So they want tighter setbacks. It's still like 16.
So they want to bring.
So the only thing that changes that is the height of the building.
Right.
And they step the building.
Yeah.
But they don't address the streetscape as much, other than wanting retail on the ground floor or the residents and stuff put up on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And they're still, they have a long way to go.
There should be some trade-offs. I think there are places where being right up against the street makes sense. You know, alleyways and things like that. And if a developer wants to say, you know, if I'm trying to maximize square footage here, you say fine, but you need to provide some public amenity, a small park or something like this. We'll give you that trade-off, but now you're donating this space for public use.
They do talk about that. So if they want to go higher or some other trade-off, then the green space, the public space, which is incorporated into this UDO amendment, an increase based on trade-offs like that. But there's still, and the other thing you said, you know, it's very generalized. It doesn't have context of neighborhood place. It's, you know, you could do the same thing anywhere you want, but if you have a neighborhood that might already have a certain character, you want to accentuate that, not just plot this.
Agreed. And, you know, we have to be careful how we approach it. So if we approach it from a look perspective, which can be very problematic, you look at places like Cornelius, Huntersville, places like that, where they say it must look this way. It has to have 3 different materials and windows must be on the street. And so people like CBS put fake windows that do nothing. And then they make it just look schizophrenic with all the materials because they're solving it in a way that's economical for them. The way I think we should be focusing about it is what are the human impacts of these things? And how does that affect how we think about our ordinances? Because it seems to just be a geometry problem, right? If you want to set back here, you can only be this high, so okay, we'll set the building back, right? I mean, you're trying to trick the system using geometry, and really what it should be saying is, what amenities are we providing for the public? How is this building going to function over time? Is there sufficient nature? Frankly, if you said that there's, you're going to lower crime rates, plant trees, get some trees planted, or better yet, don't cut them down in the first place.
It seems like neighborhoods that get more involved in these type of developments really get what they want. You don't have folks that come in there and really have, for the neighborhood, you never know what you're gonna get. The university area, excuse me, sorry, University City Partners is an advocate towards good design. And so they become a real decision-making force that the city kind of looks to as a guide of what the developer is going to be required to do. Across the street from the university, they keep getting these massive, large, long buildings for student housing. And they're the ugliest ass buildings.
Yes,
in
they are.
So
They are.
But so our goal has always been, minimize those materials, create a better balance, more brick. That's what they're all about. But it creates this continuity and something that looks more established. But one thing that Darlene Heater does up there for one of the buildings, Haven came in and they started off, we knew what we were going to get with this long 400 or 500 foot building. She started really stressing that they wanted to create small pocket parks. So the way the designer, this architect was good because what he did was, instead of having like 400 feet of building, he cut it in and had like 100 square foot green space. So it breaks that building up, and it also starts creating some green space. Now, who's going to use that? It's a whole other issue.
Right, there's no trees there.
Well, there will be. I mean, it's big enough to have it. It's designed like a park. Just having it is good.
Yep.
Who's going to use it is another issue. I mean, people probably have people sleeping there at night outside.
Well,
They don't live there.
I mean, that's a problem as well. But if we're gonna talk about civilization, we need to talk about what's new with homes as well. That's a whole other discussion. But that should not prevent us from doing the right thing. I mean, the university area in particular is before. I used to live that way. I drive through it every day to go. And those apartment buildings are sad.
You need better one at a time, but it's almost too late.
Well, again, 2020 for new UDO, and put up a lot of bad buildings between now and then. Even if we can get enough input on the UDO, of course, that's other development ordinances that deal with local things. I would say that at least the city partners can be an advocate. The developers are taking. I don't want to kick around the developers. They're whining and dining with politicians. You and me, we're not doing that. Our voice is heard in a planning meeting where most of it is being yelled at by someone about the traffic and the water. It's not genuine feedback. But if you have a large group, chamber, people like this, get enough people behind it, people listen.
Got an example for that. About 20 years ago, Walmart was going to put a new store fairly close to where Mark and I live out in Union County. And once we heard about it, the neighborhoods in that area, obviously, because of traffic and everything that comes with it. Not that we don't like Walmart, we just don't want them right there.
We don't like our neighborhood. We'll put it in someone else's.
We have people throughout the neighborhoods, for different streets. I mean, great organization to get the word out. So when we had a meeting down downtown Monroe, I mean, it just flooded. That was one of the few times I think when Walmart was defeated. There was so much outcry against it. So I mean, people in masses can make a difference.
Oh yeah, they can. I would say that it's good that people attend those meetings. But, you know, our town council meetings are only well attended when there's one of those, and a lot of people are showing up to do that. We've got to get in front of that. You need to be at the council meeting when they're making decisions about what they're gonna allow, not when a developer comes in and says, this is what I'm doing. You know, that developer's invested a whole lot of money in that, to that point. You know, they're gonna fight you as much as they can. And I don't like them, I would too. That was my business and my money that I was trying to get this project done. So if we really care, we need to get in front of it. Make our voices heard, try to get some of those things changed.